Welcome back to the Go Bros. Today we're going to be replacing the fuel injectors on a 2015 Chevy Silverado. First things first, remove the two breather hoses on the intake, and then there's two 5/16 hose clamps holding on the intake, and that'll pull right off. Unplug your map sensor and evap hoses. There's 10mm bolts holding on the intake. Take your time and get these, they're kind of a pain. There's a few plastic clips holding on the wiring harness, and then that intake will just carefully get wiggled out. Remove that foam insulation. There's one 10mm bolt holding the fuel rail stuff on. Get an open end wrench and crack all them loose. You'll probably have a little bit of pressure in there. Bleed it off and remove them. There'll be two sets of plugs for both injector banks. Use a small pick to remove those and unplug your high pressure fuel pump. There is four 13mm bolts on each injector bank. Then what you're going to do is take a pry bar and slowly work your way around the fuel rails. Take your time with this. They will eventually pop out and come free. Be careful you don't pinch any of the injector wires when you're prying the fuel rail out. The driver's side's a little trickier. You have to unbolt one of the valve cover bolts holding the fuel line going to the high pressure fuel pump and carefully wiggle it out. Now that we got both injector banks out, take some long needle nose pliers and pry those retaining clips off. Use a small pick to unclip the electrical connections and unplug all your injectors. At this point, your injectors should pull right out. Depending how old your injectors are, they might pull out a little tough. Install your new OEM injectors. Make sure they have fresh O-rings on them. You should be able to reinstall your retaining clips with your hands using a set of needle nose pliers to get them to seat in place. Nothing too special about the second one. Remove your retaining clips, undo your electrical connections, pull your injectors out, get your new injectors, pop them in. Then reinstall your retaining clips and you should be ready to reinstall. At this point, we're just doing the reverse of what we already did. Once your injector rail is set into place, use a 13mm socket to kind of bounce back and forth between bolts and slowly snug that into place. On your driver's side, you're going to have to hold that fuel line out of the way so you can sneak that fuel rail in and basically do the same thing as what we already did on the other side. Slowly snugging them bolts in till it's all the way in place. Tighten that valve cover bolt we took out. Reinstall all your fuel lines and that 10mm bolt. Once you get your fuel system tight, you can always turn the key to prime your fuel system to check for leaks before you put the intake on. Make sure to put your connectors back for both injector banks and your high pressure fuel pump. Reinstall your dampening material. Replace all the gaskets on the intake manifold, and then you can slowly and gently set that on top of the engine. Once you've wiggled it around and got it to seat properly, you can go around with a 10mm socket and snug all the bolts up, and then go through the proper torque procedure to make sure that intake seals properly. Finally, you can put your intake back on and tighten up the two 5/16 hose clamps on the throttle body and the air intake. And then there's two breather hoses on each side of the airbox. and then you are good to go. Hopefully this helps someone out. I think most people with basic tools should be able to tackle this job on their own. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.